Quicksters, welcome to Quick Take. I'm your host, Suzy, along with James. How are you, James?
I'm good. I've had a crazy morning. I can't get anything to work right,
I know.
But we are here nonetheless.
I have suffered that along with you, so I'm glad that we got technology
is what it is
to get aligned.
I know. It's embarrassing to say that I can't figure out how to make a USB port
you
function.
Didn't give up. You didn't give up, and that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, I was telling you, I have never, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm in a season right now where I have had so many executives tell me they're ready to move on. They're frustrated with their employer or what they're doing for a living. They just don't feel satisfied. They're not thriving. They're just surviving. And I thought, what an interesting, along with the other side of it is people are getting laid off as well. But so how do you make sure that you're investing in the right way in your people to make them feel energized and a part of the bigger picture?
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. And I was on a panel this morning and we were talking about that a little bit. And that, the press tends to highlight the layoffs, but fails to mention that the hiring is going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'd rather the heading or the subjects of these articles say, Intuit doing layoff will be net 100 employees by the end of the year, because they may do 1,000 layoffs, but they're going to hire 2,000.
Yeah.
And so while the market seems weird, it is weird because there are changes and layoffs, and they are influencing the way we think about the market. There's still a lot of hiring going on, and I think we've got to coin a phrase of it's a little bit of right sizing, it's a little bit of using a layoff to address overhiring and exuberant hiring that was going on in COVID, but also, these layoffs are being used as a management tool to get people in the right city, to eliminate departments and organizations that aren't functioning. And so the reality is that there's still a good market for good workers and good employees, and great leaders are still being sought after. And so as an executive, you cannot take your hand off the till, because you're going to lose your good people and you're going to keep your mediocre players. And without taking action, you will be stuck with a mediocre team.
That's so true. And executives that are really good and they are thriving, they also need to always be considering their options. So
absolutely,
this is important for leaders to have as a regular best practice, to do this proactively. If not, when there's a great opportunity that comes up for somebody that's even really happy, you could lose them as well. So this is really important.
Well, and I think the important thing, as I look over my notes here, none of these are things that you can do on Thursday and solve your problem. These are investments.
Yeah.
Most things that require that are good returns in life require compound interest.
Yeah.
And so you can't solve these problems by doing your quarterly check-in. These are systemic. These are cultural. And like we say, and a lot of things, you've got to invest the time, the long-term time, to make sure these stick.
This is a 401k.
This is the 401k for your employees. Yeah. This is the employee retention pension plan that ensures that you keep your good folks.
All right, I think it's important. Tell us what the first tip is.
Well, I think that this is a little esoteric, I think, but we have to create a culture of psychological safety.
Yeah.
And employees need to identify the fact that their employees want to be there and are comfortable. And, we have seen multiple efforts. I constantly go back to the Google's Aristotle project, where they did some tremendous research in how their teams were being effective. And the fact is that teams with high psychological safety had much higher returns on productivity, and that they had lower retention. Company after company, creating that psychological safety consistently ensures that their teams are focused and engaged. And I think it's important that we create an environment where folks feel that security.
Yeah. And just to reiterate what that is, it's providing an environment where people feel comfortable sharing, giving feedback, and not being fearful at all of any repercussions or negative. Right. And that's not easy to do. And you have to really keep yourself accountable to that, because even giving them a negative reaction or not moving it forward is not allowing that environment of real psychological safety.
Right. I can't even count the number of executive meetings I've sat in on or monitored where the leader or the speaker will say, no question is off limits. Then an off limits question gets asked, and then they bite that questioner's head off, and you just eliminated 10 years of good work in creating an environment of safety. You've got to have regular communications. You've got to have the ability to provide anonymous feedback. You've got to have one-on-ones. You've got to communicate up and down. It's a fabric about how people feel comfortable saying the emperor is naked. And it's one thing to hear it, and it's another thing to take action. So you've got to focus on this to ensure that your teams feel like they're in a place that they are safe.
Yeah, it's so good. And even asking them, do you feel comfortable from time to time? Understanding, like being an observer of you from the outside, so that you're not doing anything non-verbally or counter to what you believe you're doing.
Yep. I 100% agree. And I think that's a good segue into my second one, which is really about ensuring that your managers have that emotional intelligence to deal with the real world. Look, we've all done layoffs. I've done several as of late, or been involved in several as of late. And the next question is always, are we done?
Yes.
Is it over?
Yes.
And there's a way to answer that still ensures that there is some psychological safety. And as a manager, you need to be able to communicate with honesty, but without lying to your employees. And that takes skill. And that takes the time and effort of a leadership team to create that emotional intelligence to get your teams to read about how they should be transforming the company, talk about the leadership principles that go along with that to ensure that your managers are performing in the right way. I just think it's really critical that your managers are working with and communicating with the staff in a way that obviously continues to support that emotional safety.
And the research shows that followers of great leaders look for stability and trust. And so being able to communicate to get as much stability and regain kind of people's feet on the ground is so essential to keep them moving forward, because we all know that area of purgatory that happens after a layoff, and it just keeps the noise going, and people aren't productive and people aren't motivated. So the more that you can clean that up as quick as you can, the better off your culture is going to be.
Sure. And I think that, employees want to feel supported by their manager.
Yeah.
And you can support your employees even through a layoff.
Yep.
And studies have shown that employees who feel like they're supported by their manager are 70% more likely to stay. And that's an insane number. And I've worked with companies who have done repeated layoffs throughout a year, multiple layoffs within 1 year. And the staff that survived continued to share with me and through feedback that they felt supported by the leadership team through that.
Yeah.
And that's no small feat.
Yeah.
Because at some point, everybody's kind of got their tail between their legs and afraid it's going to get cut off. But you can still have faith in your leadership team that they are supporting you to the best of their ability. And so it is a very critical effort it is very critical that leaders think about the fact that even through rough times, they need to use that emotional intelligence and support their teams.
And it might just take more time and more silence. Practice silence and really listen.
You have to listen, and you kind of have to put your feelings down, and and be a little more altruistic about the reality. I mean, you're probably nervous about your role and your organization, your department. Are we safe? Right now, they need an adult. And they need somebody to say, hey, I've got your back. You need to be the parent. Sometimes, people want servant leaders, and then sometimes they want somebody to be in charge.
Yeah.
And you have to know when to pivot. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
It's so true. All right. What's the third?
Well, the third one, I think, is really creating that environment of comfort and safety through mentorship and career development programs. I think that if I like to say, and I sometimes get in trouble for saying it, is that I like to tell my employees, this will not be your last job.
Yeah.
And I want you to be better at the next job than you are here. And so that's my job, is to help you grow, understand where your strengths and weaknesses are. So you're at your next role. When you leave my group as the VP of product or of technology, and you go and be the CTO of another company, that you're better because of the work that we did here. Yeah. And so I do that through mentorship. I do that through career development. I do that through sponsorship. And I think when employees feel like that we have their best interest in mind, they're going to provide a lot more, be more effective employees. And so I think that creating that formal mentorship, creating that formal career development program, and allowing them to take advantage of your network and your skills and experience goes really far to ensure that your top talent is going to stick around.
You know what? I see it. I get hired a lot after those things happen, because it's showing that interest in the team. It's regrouping as a team. As a team, when things change, when people are added, when people are subtracted, that collective has to recalibrate together. So doing absolutely. A team session, even investing in the team together, helping them understand what this new normal is going to be.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So there's lots of ways to do that. I hadn't thought about that, doing it as a group.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's a change. It's like, you always say everybody's replaceable, and people always show by putting your finger in the water, you take that out and it's fine. That's not always true. And you have to get people to really understand what is this new feeling around. The team needs to feel like a team.
Yes. And I think that's a really great point, is there are lots of ways to respond to those changes. And I think group conversations around career development, group conversations around mentorship, group conversations around emotional safety are great ways to create reestablish that cohesion, which may have been atrophied or struggled or damaged during tough, difficult times. So, and that's really interesting.
It also shows that the company still will spend money on them, will invest in them. Because sometimes when a layoff happens, it feels like everything has dried up and there's nothing, now we can't do all these extracurricular things, because this just happened. But that investment is important because it helps people get back on their feet quicker.
Yeah, no matter how small it is. I mean, even... Gosh, we all know, my experience has been, and I'd love to hear your experience, is that 2/3, I'm making a number up, all statistics, they're mostly made up.
Totally.
That year after year, I usually have left 2/3 of my training budget on the table. Because while people want to have a training budget, getting them to take the training is really hard. And whether it's training, mentorship, career development, whatever it is, I would be willing to bet that even after a layoff, you can take advantage of that budget and remind folks that, hey, we still have money for you. We still want you to grow. And even that conversation can go a long way, even if they don't get around to taking it. It is the way of communicating to the group that we're still supporting them.
What a great way to show your investment in them moving forward.
Yeah.
All right. So what are the three? What are the three?
First, create and foster an environment of psychological safety. You've got to keep your people feeling like that they have a place that they can grow and evolve. You've got to, secondly, equip your managers with the skills to have emotional intelligence so they know how to have those tough conversations. They are creating that emotional or that psychological safety, and that they have the ability to handle and answer the tough questions. And then third, you've got to ensure that you do mentorship, that you're doing that type of career development, that you're looking out for your people. They want to feel like you are invested in them, and that that goes a long way to helping them understand that they have a role here and that you want them to be better and grow in that role.
And this is not a one and done investment. This is something that you should do over time.
Yep. Yeah, I know a lot of our audience complains about, they love our 3 tips, but when the 3 tips require lots of effort, that's kind of orthogonal to the spirit of a quick, the quick take. But the truth is these are things you've got to do. We like to remind you over and over because you should be reminded over and over that you need to be doing them all the time.
It's a long game. Compounded
It's
interest.
Always a long game.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.